If you add up the dates in the Bible, you're going to get about 4,000 BC for the creation. Not millions of years ago, about 4,000. Now, I'm not one of those guys that tries to put an exact date on it. I don't say it was 4004 BC, October 23rd at 2 in the afternoon. I don't think you can get that close from Scripture. I think Adam was made in the afternoon, because it was just before Eve. It's the only clue I found. And I can't prove this, but I think I figured out why God made Adam first. I think God made Adam first because he didn't want any advice on how to do it. How many would agree with that one? Hey. By the way, BC means before Christ. Almost all the new textbooks are changing it to say BCE, before the Common Era. Christ is gone from the schools, folks. Textbook says the earth is billions of years old. Jesus said the creation of Adam was the beginning. Well, was he lying? Did he not understand science? Or was he right? How old is the earth? When was the beginning? Thou, Lord, in the beginning hast laid the foundations of the earth. How old is this earth? Could that date of 4000 BC be correct? Now, I do many debates at universities and speak on a lot of talk shows and stuff, and there's always some atheist will call in and say, Hovind, I got a question. Who did Adam's sons marry? A good question, and a fair question. I say that's a good question, and I'll be glad to answer that. However, you guys are the ones that have a serious problem. The Bible says Cain went out from the presence of the Lord and dwelt in the land of Nod on the east of Eden, and Cain knew his wife, and she conceived. Well, it doesn't say he found her there, but who was his wife, and who did Seth marry anyway? And I think I can answer that. However, compared to the evolutionists, we have a minor problem. See, they believe 18 or 20 billion years ago there was a big bang where nothing exploded and made everything. And 4.6 billion years ago the earth cooled down, and it was a hot ball of rock. Earth began as a hot ball of rock. And then millions of years of torrential rains created great oceans. And swirling in the waters of the oceans is a bubbling broth of complex chemicals. Progress from a complex chemical soup to a living organism is very slow. It sure is. It don't even happen. That's how slow it is. This guy said the first self-replicating systems must have emerged in this organic soup. So according to the Big Bang Theory, 20 billion years ago there was a Big Bang. And then 4.6 billion years ago the earth cooled down. It rained on the rocks for millions of years and turned them into soup. And the soup came alive 3 billion years ago. And that first life form found somebody to marry. Now there's a good trick. And something to eat, of course, and slowly evolved into everything we see today. That's the Big Bang Theory. So great-great-great-great-great-great-great-great-grandpa was soup. I spoke at a college in Boston one time. They said, Hovind, you can come speak at our college if our professors can ask you any questions they want. Because we like to show to students how dumb you Christians really are. I said, I would be honored to come for that. So I showed up. There were 6 professors and all their students in the room. You know, I felt like Daniel in the lion's den. I said, folks, I got my charts out. I said, folks, I believe the Bible. I believe 6,000 years ago God made everything, and 4,400 years ago there was a flood that destroyed everything. Noah saved 2 of each kind, not species, kind, on the ark. And then I told them what they believe, because most of them don't know what they believe, you know. 20 billion years ago, Big Bang. 4.6 billion years ago, earth cooled down, rained on the rocks for millions of years, and turned them into soup, and the soup came alive. One professor was really upset. He said, Hovind, do you realize there are hundreds of varieties of dogs in the world? I said, oh yeah, there's a bunch. He said, do you mean to tell me that you believe all those dogs came from just 2 dogs on Noah's Ark? You expect me to believe that? I said, sir, would you look at what you're teaching your students? You're teaching your students that all those dogs came from a rock. He didn't have any more questions after that. Anyway, textbook says the earth is billions of years old. Jesus said the creation of Adam was the beginning. Now, was he lying? Was he stupid? Or was he right? How old is the earth? Do the books in this town teach the kids the earth is billions of years old? Are they going to learn this in school when they go back? Of course they are. 4.6 billion years ago. Well, the Bible clearly teaches about 6,000 years. Let's see what the scientific evidence says. In 1999, the world's population crossed over the 6 billion mark. In 1985, there were 5 billion people on planet Earth. In 1800, there was 1 billion people here. Everybody agrees there were about 1 billion people around 1800. And everybody agrees the population is growing rapidly. But the world is not overcrowded. Don't fall for that overcrowded propaganda going around the schools. The world is not overcrowded. The whole world's population today, all 6 billion people, would fit inside Jacksonville, Florida. Twice. That little city has 25 billion square feet. The world's not overcrowded, folks. Have you driven across Nebraska? Or Kansas? Or New Mexico? Or Texas? Drive across Texas. Anybody ever driven across Texas? You can go for 3 days. Are we still in Texas? Yeah, nothing out there but flat rabbits. I tell you what. The world's not overcrowded. Drive across Tennessee, for heaven's sake. It's not overcrowded. Look, if it's overcrowded where you are, move. Because there's plenty of room out there, other places, okay? Back when Jesus was here, the world's population was only about 250 million. It looks like the whole population growth curve started about 4,400 years ago. Now, if you believe in evolution, you got a problem. You think man's been here for 3 million years. In 3 million years, the population would have grown. Right now, there'd be about 150,000 people per square inch. That would be crowded. No, man's not been here for millions of years. The population today tells us man's only been here about 4,400 years. They said it looks like there's been a genetic bottleneck. The whole population was reduced to a few thousand just a couple thousand years ago. Hey, they're getting closer. Actually, it was all reduced to 8 about 4,400 years ago. Keep studying. I tell everybody, you keep studying. When you get done climbing the mountain of truth, you find the Baptists have been sitting there all along. Galaxies are spinning, but the stars in the middle go faster than the stars at the outside. So why do we still have spiral arms on the galaxies? They should not be there, okay? Galaxies are evidence that the Earth, the universe at least, is not billions of years old. Stars are blowing up all the time. It's called a supernova or a nova. But a star blows up about every 30 years, and yet there's less than 300 supernova fragments that have been found, remnants. That's only a few thousand years worth of stars. Why aren't there billions of supernova remnants? Some people say, well, new stars are forming in Crab Nebula or Eagle Horsehead Nebula. No, that's a bunch of baloney. We covered that on video 7. Nobody's ever seen a star form. The planet Jupiter is cooling off rapidly. Saturn, the stars are changing from red giants to white dwarfs. The textbook says it takes billions of years. We know that's not true. All the ancient astronomers said Sirius was a red star. Today it's a white dwarf. It happens in a few thousand years. Don't let them tell you it takes billions of years. Jupiter's cooling off rapidly, constantly losing heat. It cannot be billions of years old. It would have been cold by now. Jupiter's moon Ganymede has a strong magnetic field, indicating a liquid core, meaning it is not billions of years old. Saturn's rings are expanding away from the planet. They cannot be billions of years old. There's more about that in the book In the Beginning by Walt Brown. Excellent book, by the way. The moon goes around the Earth. How many knew that already? The moon goes around the Earth. Did you know as the moon goes around the Earth, it's gradually getting farther away? We're slowly losing the moon. It's leaving us a couple inches a year. No big deal. Nothing to worry about. Plus, nothing you can do about it anyway. But the moon is getting farther from the Earth every day. Now, kids, this is going to be complicated, so listen carefully. The moon is getting farther from the Earth every day. So that means that it used to be closer. How many can figure this out with no help at all? Okay. Well, if you bring the moon in closer, you start to create a problem because the moon causes the tides. Now, you folks in Knoxville probably don't worry about the tides. But in Pensacola, you worry about the tides. See, if the moon was closer, the tides would be higher. There's a law called the inverse square law. If you brought the moon in to 1/3 the distance, you take the 1/3, flip it over, and square it. It's 9 times the gravitational pull. If you run all the math on this, you'll find out the moon and Earth would have been almost together 1.4 billion years ago. Walt Brown says 1.2 billion years ago is the max lifespan for Earth and moon. Well, if the moon was whizzing around just above the surface of the Earth, that explains what happened to the tall dinosaurs. They got mooned. Comets are flying around through space, but comets are constantly losing material. I mean, stuff blows off the tail of a comet. You can't just keep losing, okay? Pretty soon it's gone. You know, it's kind of like your checkbook. See, If your outgo exceeds your income, your upkeep will be your downfall every single time. Well, these comets are always losing material. That's something you just can't keep doing forever. Most astronomers say comets can't last more than about 10,000 years. Okay, well then I have a question. Why do we still have comets out there? They should all be gone by now.